Last year, Haute42 worked hard to develop a range of leverless controllers to cover a wide range of preferences. They did well in this regard since everyone seems to have their own personal favourite. The next two releases in Haute42's portfolio are a bit different. The controller we're looking at today, the M-Lite, and the one I'll be looking at soon, the P13 Pro, are both iterations on existing models. So, is the M-Lite an upgrade? Is it worth replacing your M16? Let's take a closer look. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. I just want to say thank you to Haute42 for sending the M-Lite over to me. No instructions were given and all thoughts on my own. Also, thanks to everyone for subscribing so far. Watch time from subscribers has gone up to nearly 8%, which is amazing. So let's keep chipping away at that. If you're still on the fence, play a game with me. Pick a number between 1 to 16, and if the ruby bead lands on your number, congrats, hit the subscribe button. If one of the silver beads lands on your number, just smash the like button so this gets sent out to the algorithm. Thank you so much. If you've stumbled on this video and you don't know what you're looking at, this is a controller designed mostly for fighting games. The idea is that movements are more precise on a leverless controller. So instead of a traditional arcade lever on the left side of the controller, we have buttons. Left, down, right, and up over here. This is a 16 button model, so it also has these 4 additional buttons on the face for your L3 and R3 and whatever else. Let's go over some of the features of the M-Lite. It has a 212 by 152 by 13mm rose gold aluminium body. 23.5mm ABS plastic keycaps cover the face of the controller with one 25.8mm jump button. The action buttons have a gentle curve on the right side, but I would still consider this closer to a Vuelix than a Noir layout. It has a screen and EXT port, which all good GP2040 controllers should, and 5 customizable function buttons. These are usually quite wobbly on Haute42's acrylic stack controllers, but the deeper seat and solid pockets make them pleasant enough to use here. For me, there are 3 notable features of the M-Lite. The first is the generous chamfer on the chin of the controller. I think it's quite important for a small controller to have a chamfer because the hands are more likely to make contact with this area. There's branding on this slope and I think it looks quite good. It shows up differently depending on the light and I don't find it distracting at all. I think it helps to legitimize the product as a proper controller. The second feature is the ambient light strip along the bottom. The original M series had a transparent strip down here as well, but the LEDs weren't close enough to the edge to have much, if any, effect in most lighting conditions. It's been implemented with real effort this time. The LEDs are vibrant and visible on desk as well as lap play. These lights can be set independently from the button lights, so you can have them both doing different things. Also, the firmware is a bespoke version of the GP2040 CE software, so make sure you're very careful if you intend to update the controller. Finally, a big key feature for me, and I promise you I'm not messing about here, is the onboard labeling. That's right, I like to have my buttons labeled. It's not as important with the action and direction buttons after a while, that's just an aesthetic choice. But I personally have issues with function buttons. I'm always forgetting what the middle ones do, so it's great to see what they are at a glance. This is the kind of thing that adds up during long training sessions. Of course, some people prefer a completely unlabeled, clean look. But that's not me. This is clean enough. The M-Lite comes pre-installed with Haute42 crystal switches. These switches are great for showing off the RGB capabilities of any controller, but for my taste, they sound loose and orally unsatisfying. I'm not saying they're bad switches, just not to my preference. My favorite switches for any Haute42 controller is the wind engines, but today I'm going to try out their brand new shadow hunting switches. It's a pretty sick name for switches and I hope the sound and feeling will match. They have a shorter travel distance compared to the crystal and wind engines, and you can see the difference in height easily, even from a playing angle. There's no acrylic panel on the top for art modding, but it won't take long for Etsy vendors to offer their printing services for the M-Lite. I personally feel like a good looking controller like this doesn't really need art mods, especially since it already has labeling on it. There's also no other off-the-shelf controller with this rose gold colorway, so it's just best to keep it as it is. Due to the size of the M-Lite, it won't be ideal for some people when it comes to lap play. Through most of my play sessions, I had my left pinky pushed up to the side of the controller, partly to keep it in place, and partly because it had nowhere else to go. This won't be an issue for you if you float your hands when you play, but then your legs will do all the work to balance the controller. I felt most comfortable when laying my palms flat to help with balance too, and thankfully the deep chamfer and rounded corners helped to make this a pleasant experience. My review unit isn't perfectly flat on the bottom right corner, so if you're a desk player and your model has this issue too, you might find that hitting the LT button firmly will cause it to bump on the table. Refer to my sound test earlier in the video to understand what I mean. I'm not sure if this imbalance will go away with time, but if this bothers you, sticking a few layers of tape or something similar should correct this. Other than that issue, I'm a big fan of the aluminium build. I can confirm that the M-Lite has a robust, high quality, comfortable chassis. And don't worry if you're scared of cold controllers, it does warm up nicely during play, which almost makes it feel softer. The spacing is slightly wider than the S series, but not as wide as the R, T, U, and M+. I do feel like my fingers fall naturally over the buttons without any stretching. Perfect. As I mentioned in my modding section, I installed the shadow hunting switches here. They sound great to my ears, very close to the wind engines with a slightly deeper timbre. Paired up in an aluminium chassis, they are louder and have more attack than they would on an acrylic stack, but they do retain their creaminess. The faster actuation feels great and they bounce back firmly, so rapid pressing feels pleasant. Shadow hunting switches are definitely a good pairing with the M-Lite for playing. When it comes to sound, that will depend on your own preference. For this comparison, I have one large and one small controller, both use aluminium in their design. This is the Haute42 M16 Plus. This is also an aluminium model and it doesn't have any labeling on the face, hence why I have a sticker on top of mine because I'm always forgetting which function buttons does what. This is the only way you can get labeling on the M+. This controller has 7 function buttons up here compared to the 5 on the M-Lite. But that is not necessarily a good thing if you go to tournaments, because CPT rules, for example, don't allow 2 buttons to have the same input. The problem here is that these L3 and R3 buttons are directly linked to a couple of the face buttons and you can't separate them. So that means we have repeated inputs for these buttons. If this is a problem, you can remove the L3 and R3 nubs and tape over it during a tournament, and hopefully the officials will allow you to get away with this. If you like large controllers and if you like lap play, the M+ is a great choice. But the M-Lite is preferable over the M+ when it comes to labeling, branding and travel. This is the Doyle HitPad standard. I consider this a small controller, but because it's so wide, it sits perfectly fine on the lap, so it kind of behaves like a big controller in that way. The chin is very shallow though, so resting the palms is more comfortable on the M-Lite. The HitPad has some nice aesthetic details, so it's not necessary to art mod this either. To achieve these aesthetics, they went for a build that creates a hollow sound. Too hollow for my personal taste, but if that's what you like, then don't worry about my opinion on that. The Doyle also has ambient RGB with a fully transparent base, but customization seems better on the M-Lite since on the M-Lite, it can be configured independently from the face LEDs. The HitPad has 2 USB sockets compared to 1 on the M-Lite. This allows you to choose the placement for comfort, and it's also an alternative if one of them fails. All of these controllers use the GP2040, so under the hood, they have the same features and compatibility. You can find my full reviews on these controllers on my channel. I don't have the original small M model by Haute42, but just from eyeballing it, the differences are the power light, additional function buttons, no labeling, and a steeper, less generous chamfer. The M-Lite is for you if you like the 3 following things. Number 1, a small form factor for easy travel and a tidier desk. Number 2, a great, complete aesthetic that doesn't require modding. And number 3, an excellently built controller. So to answer my question at the beginning of the video, is it an upgrade to the original M16? Just on paper, I can definitely say yes, it's a better controller. If you already have the original M, I don't think it's necessary to replace that. But if you don't have either, and you like small, premium controllers, then choose this one. If you've been watching my reviews for a while, you know that I prefer my controllers big as a lap player. But if I only had room to own one small controller, the M-Lite is the one I would choose. All in all, I think it feels and looks great. Was it necessary? Probably not. But if Haute42's goal was to create a definitive version of their smaller aluminium controller, then I would say they have achieved that with the M-Lite. Thanks for joining me for today's video. I hope you found it helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe, especially if you joined in on my game earlier. If not, feel free to play right now. All necessary links are below, and if you want to see a video about making the G16 comfortable for lap play, click on this video.